You like Stephen King? Dark bleatings, everybody. In this video, I'm doing a if you like these Stephen King books, then you might also like ... And today's books that we're doing some comparisons to are, I got to check my notes always, The Long Walk, The Dead Zone, Firestarter, Roadwork, and Cujo. So I'm doing these roughly in publication order. I got a whole list of everything he's ever put out. Novels, we're going to do short stories and novellas separately, but novels that he's put out, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples, 2 or 3 examples for each of these books, of books I think that you might enjoy if you enjoy each of these. So we're going to go in turn. If you're a regular viewer here, you might notice that I have a complete lack of music on this video at the start and the end. That is because adding the music means I have to upload, download, edit, and then re-upload, and I just don't have time. I'm pre-filming because I've got so much stuff coming up. My life is both a well-oiled machine and in complete disarray somehow. So yeah, you'll probably see me in the same t-shirt for the next 8 videos or so, but anyway, let's get into the topic. So the first book on this list is The Long Walk. There's a lot of buzz about this one, particularly at the moment, because the film has just come out, or it is coming out. I can't remember. I haven't seen it in any case. And for those who are unfamiliar, this was one of his first novels. It was released under the name Richard Bachman. It was, I think he said that this is the first novel that he wrote. So he would have written it before Carrie, but Carrie was his first published success. The Long Walk is really, really unique and actually very difficult to find books that compare to it, as I have discovered while I've been making the notes for these videos, for this whole series. It's very hard to line some things up with certain Stephen King books because they are so unique, and I guess that was something that somehow I had not realised about the types of stories he tells before. But anyway, The Long Walk is about an annual competition where you just have to walk, and young men sign up for this. The prize at the end is substantial, so I think it's like basically anything you want for the rest of your life is the prize at the end. And the rules are very simple. You have to be the last man standing for this long walk. There are other rules, like you have to maintain a steady pace of, I think it's 3 miles an hour or something like that. It might be even more than that. I think there was a recent cinema release where they had people on treadmills and they had to walk 3 miles an hour for the duration of the film, and if they slowed down they had to leave and couldn't see the end. But yeah, there's a minimum speed you have to walk, and obviously the further in you go. And it was also the punishments for not meeting the rules, a death. So there is only going to be one person alive at the end of this, if anybody wins at all. So it's a really, really interesting book. It predates a lot of the Battle Royale style stuff. This is a very, like a tamer version of that kind of thing, but written decades ago. So it does precede most of the things that you would normally lump into this category. Now, I didn't want to go giving you suggestions like Battle Royale or the Hunger Games for this one, because it isn't a Battle Royale. It's a last man standing, but the contestants, I mean, they can screw each other over, but this isn't a kill each other to be the last man standing kind of situation. And in terms of journeys, I had to start thinking about the story a little differently. So I'm hoping with this list to give you suggestions of things that aren't super obvious, if obvious things come to your mind. So I thought about what this story was about, and to me this is about losing yourself in what seems like a seemingly simple kind of scenario. All you have to do is walk, but then when you factor in hunger, thirst, needing to go to the bathroom, and the fact that this is all public and televised, there are people on the sidelines and the whole world is watching you, that feeling of not being able to escape yourself and your basic needs, having absolutely no privacy, things like that. So I kind of went down the mental health route for comparisons for this one. So up first, now this is super heavy, and I would say this is heavier than The Long Walk because we are in the mind of the protagonist at all times, and it's very dark. I pronounced this wrong when I've talked about this book on my channel before, but it's Coup de Grace by Sophia Adram. Sorry about my pronunciation. This is a story about somebody's descent into an empty sort of underground railway station, train station, I think, and they just can't find their way out. And obviously, very strong mental health. It's not veiled that this is a mental health story. The writing is both beautiful and very disturbing, and I recommend it for people, but I would check your trigger warnings. If you have mental health triggers, I would definitely make sure you check them on this. I don't want to say what they are here, just because I personally view trigger warnings as spoilers, and so I only want to see them if I look for them. So just in case there are people in the audience the same as me for that, but yeah, I would strongly recommend checking that just in case, if you're worried about anything. But it's a really complex story that is actually a simple story, but just told with lots of layers, if that makes any sense. And then the other one, I talked about this to death a couple years back, is Full Immersion by Gemma and Moore. This is about somebody who is suicidal in the wake of postnatal depression, feels very alone, and undertakes an experimental type of mental health, I was going to say surgery, that's not correct. Why I know words? Why I lose the word? Therapy, treatment, mental health treatment. And then this is an internal journey as well, told in a lot of scenes and metaphor and memory and things like that. And something that the characters in The Long Walk experience is like reflecting, self-reflection, wondering how and why they signed up for this opportunity when now the heaviness of the stakes are actually hitting them once they're in the circumstances. I could have picked books that had younger characters, because I've heard people saying this is a coming of age story, and I wholeheartedly disagree. No one really gets to age in any regard whatsoever in that story, but that was kind of the closest I could get with it. So you are going to think some of these suggestions are odd, okay? So let's move on to The Dead Zone. Once again, I haven't really read anything like this one. This isn't a personal favourite. I know a lot of King fans absolutely love The Dead Zone. This was kind of a bottom tier story for me. I've read everything of his so far except for his newest book, which I haven't got around to yet. And in the grand scheme, I think this is in like my bottom 20, somewhere around there, which people disagree with me on, and that's fine. So The Dead Zone is about a guy who's happily in love. He's a young man, he's got the love of his life, his high school sweetheart and everything, and he gets into, I think he gets into an accident, or this some sort of head injury anyway, or condition. He goes into a coma, and when he wakes up, it's a few years later. The love of his life has moved on and is now married. Very sad, but in his literal wake of coming out of this coma, he realizes that he has a paranormal ability, and there are some quite strong political themes. There are people comparing this book to the current situation in the USA, as if Stephen King predicted Trump and his sort of dictatorship type ways. Because the president in that story has got some jarring similarities. It's like when The Simpsons does that kind of stuff. So I didn't have a story in mind that was exactly like that. Once again, the only stories of sort of paranormal abilities that were coming to mind for me were other Stephen King books. So I have two for you. One is a little more obvious on the nose, and one you're going to think, what? So the first one, the most obvious comparison I could think of was Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. Now, thematically, with the politics and everything, and the right-wing, the extreme right-wing stuff, this is a lot more on the nose than The Dead Zone. The Dead Zone is political in theme, and in reflection of the character and what the main character is fighting against. This one is a straight up extreme right-wingers have like quite literally it's like mind control, like spread kind of like demonic possession kind of thing, where people are losing loved ones left, right and center to right-wing propaganda on the TV and things like that. Now obviously this isn't going to be for everybody. Now the right-wingers in question in this book are so extreme, they're absurd. This is a caricature of what we're seeing, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that one really deals with the, oh my god, dictatorship, mind washing, like that. It deals with that kind of aspect of it. very disturbing. The other book for this category, you're gonna think, what is Monster by Christopher Pike. Now, this is a childhood favourite. This is maybe the first, like, not totally child book horror that my mum bought for me. I have loved, this is the actual edition I had. It's so yellowed and stuff now. I really, really love this book, and I used to read so much Christopher Pike. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar, Christopher Pike's Monster, I don't know why I keep saying his full name like that, is about a high school. I want to say that she's like 17 or 18 or something. It's been quite a while since I read it, but that is how firmly lodged in my brain this story is. I love it so much. The opening scenes are some of the best ever. She just bursts into a party with a shotgun and shoots a couple of people that, but she's very specific about who she's targeting, so it's not like a random act of violence. So it seems very deliberate and important to her. And then she's going through a sort of transformation of her own, and that was this is why I thought of this book when I was thinking about what's going on with the protagonist in the Dead Zone, is that something happens to him, and then when he comes around, he's different now. He's got different abilities. Now that general kind of idea, I thought I could basically throw any vampire story onto this. You know, any story where somebody's going through some sort of supernatural transformation, like a werewolf story would also apply, but nothing really kind of got to the heart of what Stephen King did in the Dead Zone, apart from this one for some reason. So our main character is going through a change, and it's allowing certain things. I don't want to say too much about it, but like, yeah, if you missed this one as a teenager or you never hit it, I would still recommend it. I think I'm going to do a reread on that one. So that's like the less obvious choice that you might think is freakish that I've even brought it up. Number 3, Firestarter. Once again, there are books in the Stephen King list where I had like ideas straight away for things I think you might like if you like those, but Firestarter was another one. This list has been particularly hard for me, where I just for the longest time just couldn't think of anything, because yes, there are plenty of stories about people with paranormal activities, but there are much fewer stories about very young children with paranormal activities, and apart from stuff that's kind of like based on Stephen King stories that are kind of ripping from it, but there is nothing quite like Firestarter. Carries the closest comparison, but that's a Stephen King book. So what I focused on was for this first suggestion, was a late coming of age kind of thing. A woman realizing she has more power than she thought and figuring out how to direct it, while the people around her all want things from her and their intentions are kind of nefarious as far as her well-being goes. And the perfect comparison I could draw for that was Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, which I've talked a lot about on this channel because I'm obsessed with this book. I just think it's so good. So Black Sheep, I can't go into it too much because there's something in the first couple of chapters that just made me cackle like a witch. I was so happy to read it, but I would view it as a spoiler. So it's about a young woman who has moved away from home, and there's obviously like some real reason why she's moved, and it's that she comes from a really, really small, really, really religious community, and at some point she just realized that she just didn't buy into it. It wasn't for her, but this isn't the kind of place where you can, you know, be an atheist or agnostic or not, you know, totally on board with the religion and still be accepted in the community. Like you're either in the church or you're out of the whole community. So that's kind of what happened to her. But then she gets cause to go back. It's kind of an obligation. It's kind of something she does want to do. And when she gets back there, you quickly realize as the reader that everybody kind of responds to her arrival in kind of weird ways. Like she's not being treated exactly like everybody else is being treated. So I thought like when I actually really thought about this, that are I can't remember, Vesper, that's her name. I love that name. The main character's name is Vesper, and I just thought that she actually had so many similarities to Charlie from Firestarter in terms of like character growth and the kinds of things that are happening to her. So, but I recommend that as a book anyway, just in general. And then the second one for Firestarter, I just had the ebook of this. It's called Vanity Kills by Erica Summers, and this one is a little bit more out of the box in terms of like applying this to Firestarter. But again, Charlie's a little girl that has pyromania? No. Pyrokinesis. She's pyrokinetic. She can make fire with her mind. And so I was thinking about that sort of transformative thing, like sort of something otherworldly like happening in yourself. And Vanity Kills is about a medical center that's conducting medical research, like drug testing kind of stuff on willing participants, and the drug in question is to apparently treat scarring, so all different types of scar tissue. So the people that are at the center have all got like various different types of scarring caused by different things. So there was like one caused by fire, one caused by pretty horrible amputation, and just like things like that. And but you know, it's a horror story, so maybe something's up with the drug. And there are people who have been changed irreversibly, they think, from whatever got them the scar tissue in the first place, and then there is something transformative happening when it seemed like the drug actually does work, and now they're changing and they don't really understand what's happening. There's more to it than that, but I can't go into much more without spoiling it. But if you're looking for sort of like a self-transformation, it could be good or bad, I'm not gonna say, but that's kind of what I focused on for this one. Roadwork. Oh, this was one of the hardest of all, and no less because Roadwork is in my bottom 5 Stephen King novels. It's just not a favourite for me. I wasn't in a very good way when I read it. I was really ill. I think I had the mumps when I was reading that, and I just felt hideous. Kept falling asleep with the book in my hands because of being so ill and being on so many painkillers, and then just waking up after having some sort of night terror. And I think I've just associated that with the story unfairly. But in any case, I don't really like it. But it is about a guy who is now alone. He did have a wife. She's not there anymore for certain reasons. And the government or the council or something want his house. They want to buy his house because they want to build a road or something through it. Yeah, road work, that makes sense. And he doesn't want to give it up, but he's being really pressured, and it looks like he's going to be forced to leave his house. And then he's really clinging on to this house, like it's kind of like the remnants of things that he's already lost. He does not want to give up the house as well. And that's as best as I can remember Roadwork, really. And so I got some that are kind of more literal suggestions, and then some that again I've gone into metaphor. So let's have a look. Right, the first one, I'm going to mention this one first because I've talked about it before, and this is probably the one that's most of a reach. So if we're going completely again from a mental health perspective about a guy who is very attached, this is how I've interpreted it, he's really attached to a version of himself that in the case of Roadwork he has tied it into his house. And he's kind of on a slippery slope mentally with how he feels about himself and the situation and stuff. So Eric LaRocca's At Dark I Become Loathsome sprang to mind because I read this in the last few months, and this is about a guy on a fairly severe mental health journey where he's actually trying to heal. That story is about a guy who his son was kidnapped. I'm only laughing, like, not because it's funny, but just because it's horrendous, and that's my nervous reflex. But his son was kidnapped, and then it's a year on, and the police are just no closer to finding out what happened. They don't know if he's alive or dead, and they don't know who took him or why or anything. And so the protagonist is just having to live with that, and he can't cope with it. But the hope that everything is going to be okay, he's going to get answers, is like kind of keeping him going. And but he has like suicidal thoughts and everything because it's like the worst thing that could happen, and not knowing and things. And then his way of coping with all of this is that he wants to help other people that have got like a similar depression, and so he develops a kind of like therapy, and it's through helping other people that like that kind of keeps him going. And again, a big sort of journey of self-exploration with very heavy themes and self-reflection and seeking answers and things. That's why I linked that book to this. But if you want something that's a little lighter, because that is a very heavy book, again, you should probably check trigger warnings on At Dark I Become Loathsome. Excellent book, but yes, check trigger warnings if you have any concerns. Now, things that are more related to place, and I wanted to be a little bit more literal. We have got Into the Wild Green Yonder by Peter Crowther and Tim Leben, which is a this edition from PS Publishing is so beautiful, by the way. This is about a man and a woman, a young married couple that are trying to buy their first house, and they find a place, and the woman isn't fussed on it, but the guy is so drawn to it for whatever reason, and he wants to make the place his own, and so he starts in the garden. And then it's such a weird story, so he starts with a bit of gardening, and then he can't get back to the house. He can see it, he can't get back to it, and it's like the garden is like messing with him, and it goes on. Like, there's a lot more to it than that, but I don't want to like spoil anything else that happens in the story. But this gave me such dread, because it reminded me a little bit of, if you've seen or read In the Tall Grass by Stephen King and Joe Hill, it had that kind of feel where like everything should be familiar, and it is, but nothing is acting in a familiar way. Everything is wrong, you're kind of trapped. And that was what I focused on about Roadwork for this, like this kind of trapped in what should be a comforting location for you isn't. It's like everything is changing around you. So I kind of went with that. Recommend that. It's such a fun, weird read. And then lastly for this, I've got S.Q. McGrath's Hilltop House. This is about someone very attached to place, but also, as a little extra thing I thought might be fun for you, if you take this suggestion, it's about a place very attached to a person also. So a mother and daughter, teenage daughter, move into a new house, and the house is sentient, and I wanted something a little lighter for the suggestion, because Roadwork to me is a dark story, and this is a dark story, but it does have some very effective dark humor just here and there. But the house really takes a particular liking to the teenage girl, and so that affects her life, everything that's happening to her. And there's a whole bunch of stuff, but yeah, I really wanted to give a suggestion that was where like the location and a house in particular was like the star of the story, because I feel like in Roadwork, from what I remember, the protagonist is like really amplifying the importance of keeping hold of this particular house, and so that's what I thought about with this one. Okay, the last suggestion, and this is probably, no, I think I do prefer The Long Walk, but Cujo is the next one we're going on, and I love Cujo. I think it's such a great story. I got 4 suggestions for you for this one, because I thought of a few different things. So Cujo, if you don't know, is about a woman and her son who are trapped in a car with a rabid dog, a huge Saint Bernard. Rabid Saint Bernard is outside, and this was written before mobile phones, so like it always makes me think about how I was born in the age where we had no mobile phones. I remember getting my first one as a teenager when they were the shiny new thing, and you just couldn't believe you had a phone in your hand you could take everywhere. We take it for granted now. So Donna, the mother, Leah, she takes the car to a guy that fixes cars. Just so happens that he's not there, and the car breaks down, and it's like set up. This car, it's inevitable. This car was just going to die at some point, but it breaks down there. And she gets out, and then that's when the Cujo appears, the dog. And so because she has a young son, she's just trapped in the car. It's baking hot. They don't have food and water, obviously. They weren't expecting to be stranded. And this little house with the guy that fixes the cars is, you know, just up out of the way. It's not likely anyone's going to go by there. And there's no one to help her. And it's just a nightmare scenario. Now, once again, harder than you'd think to find a story similar. Unless you're talking Stephen King stories where it's one or two characters trapped in one room. So, I went for some killer animal things for fun and some other stuff. So firstly, in terms of killer animals, we have got Bishop by Candice Nola. I read this a little while ago. It was a very unique were story. Not necessarily a werewolf, and maybe not even just a were thing. Maybe there are other things that antagonize the were thing. And I don't want to talk too much about Bishop. You could probably tell what the were thing is based on the cover here. But yeah, this was really cool. This is about a young... I'm probably going to bring this book up again, actually. This is about, in this series of Stephen King things, this is about a girl that's kind of like lost in the woods, and then, you know, there are things in the woods, and you know, she seems to be being tracked by something horrible, very horrible. And so she's not trapped in a car, but even though she is a very competent hiker and everything, she is trapped in a scenario where she doesn't know how dangerous the thing is that's after her. She just knows that she's pursued and that there isn't really anywhere to hide. So obvious Cujo comparison there. It was a fun time. And then I've got Dan Howarth Territory, this lovely little novella. This is about a very cold, snowy little town that comes under the siege of wolves, very large wolves that are acting a little bit, well, they're not acting unwolf-like, but slightly weird. Like, the wolves are sort of encroaching on the town. They don't normally do that because they live in the woods and stuff. They don't normally feel the need, but now people are being killed. And obvious comparison, big dogs, people scare, or big dog. It's a really, really, really good story. There's a little bit more to it than that, obviously. But yes, I thought of those two first. And then when I tried to think a little bit more out of the box about this, I came up with two that feel maybe a little weird, but let me explain. So while Donna is trapped in the car with her son, this is something the film left out. The film is pretty faithful, but there are some things it left out. And I think, if I remember correctly, it left out that prior to Donna breaking down in the car with her son, she had an affair. And so she feels really guilty about this. And she had a lot of time to reflect. So while she's trapped in this car, becoming more and more panicked and delirious and just frightened for her son's comfort and then life and everything, she has a lot of time to reflect about her decision making, and she has a lot of time to put herself in a loop about what a terrible wife and mother she is, that this situation is happening because of a sequence of events that have led her there, of bad decisions that she's made. And so from that angle, I have got Swimming in the Sea of Trees by Adam Millard. This is a nice little short read as well. This is about a couple that go to, I can never pronounce it or remember exactly how to pronounce it, and I'm sorry, for lack of a better term, I really don't like it, but it's been nicknamed the Suicide Forest in Japan. And in real life, this is a forest where people kind of go to end their lives, and it's kind of a hotspot for that. And they've got, you know, groundskeepers and things that, you know, warn people not to go away from the path markers and things, because it's a really, really large, dense forest as well. And if you get lost in there, that could also be quite a problem for you. But yeah, there's lots of sort of folklore about it. There are people that believe that this place is full of spirits for obvious reasons and things like that. Swimming in the Sea of Trees is about a couple that go to this forest, and they're just kind of sightseeing. It's not for anything crazy, but there is something supernatural in the forest going on here, and they are reflecting very heavily on bad decisions they've made, or things that they deem bad decisions, and spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, cause and consequence, and kind of like if they deserve what's happening to them, and you know, they're forced to face unpleasant realities about themselves and their decisions. And then the last one a lot more fun because I wanted to end the video a bit lighter. Not that that's not fun, but again, very heavy themes and stuff. And Adam Millard is normally absolutely hilarious, but this one, like, the characters are witty, but the story is not funny. It's not like you can laugh as you turn every page on that one. But the last story I want to talk about, dark themes. It is a horror story, but it's like the idea is so fun that that's my main takeaway from that one. It's called Optic Nerve, and it's by Rebecca Rowland, or Rowland. I'm so sorry, Rebecca, if I've messed up your surname there. I really loved it. It was about a guy that gains a sort of paranormal ability, like a supernatural kind of ability, and his decisions and his decision making leads him down a certain path, and then oh my god, and we're in this guy's head, and he just does not have the nicest thoughts about his wife, for example, and things like that. And I'm just laughing because, like, it's very honest about people, this book. But again, this is another one where because of this guy's ability that he finds he has, he spends a lot of time thinking, like, in his own internal monologue. So he's very much in his head, and he's relatively unaware or not concerned by the wider world of things. Like, he's very much putting himself in a bubble, which I thought, you know, metaphorically that is very linked to Cujo and the themes and what Donna's going through there. So I hope that I've given you a few good book suggestions. If any books just instantly came to your mind when I said the titles of the Stephen King books, please, please, please put them in the comments, because I struggled so much to come up with books for this video in particular. I've made a list of like all of the Stephen King books, and I've been adding little suggestions for things that people might also like on each of them, but this particular one was, oh, it took me forever. So yeah, if you have better suggestions or additional suggestions that you think that I might like and that everyone else might like that might be watching the video, yes, please put them in the comments. I will see you in the next video. Bleed!